Rain had just begun to mist across the cracked windshield of the old sedan, as Malik pulled into the gravel lot of Royce's Roadhouse bar. The place looked like it hadn't changed in 40 years. Same wooden siding. Same crooked neon sign buzzing faintly. Same dim windows glowing amber against the early night. It wasn't much, but after 8 months deployed overseas and 2 days of straight travel, Malik just needed somewhere quiet to breathe. He shut the car door gently, rolling his shoulders to shake off the stiffness from the long drive. His fatigue jacket hung loosely on his frame, the desert tan fabric worn from real work, not costume stitching. His boots were off-duty ones, dark gray, soft, broken in for comfort. He didn't care how they looked. Tonight wasn't about appearances. Inside, the warm smell of fried food and old whiskey settled over him like a blanket. A blues guitar hummed lazily from the jukebox, the low chatter of the evening crowd blending with the clink of glasses. Nobody paid him much attention as he walked toward the far corner booth. Good, that was how he wanted it. He ordered sweet tea, nothing stronger. His head was still adjusting to being home, and the quiet felt unfamiliar, almost too gentle. As he sipped, he found his thoughts drifting toward his mother's porch back in Winston-Salem, her voice full of pride, even though she never said it loudly. He thought about his little sister, who kept sending him goofy voice notes during deployment just to make him smile. He was finally going to see them tomorrow. For the first time in months, Malik felt his heart slow down, his shoulders eased. Peace, that rare thing he had learned never to take for granted. Then the door swung open. Wind crashed in first, scattering napkins from the bar counter. A group of 7 men stepped through the doorway. Big guys, rough around the edges, wearing weathered leather jackets, decorated with patches from units Malik recognized but had never served in. They talked loudly, their boots stomping like they were trying to wake the whole building. At first, Malik didn't pay attention, but the moment the men reached the bar, one of them, a tall man with a bushy gray beard and a face like carved granite, cut off mid-laugh. His eyes locked onto Malik's uniform. Everything about his posture shifted. He nudged the man beside him, who nudged the next, until all 7 were staring. Conversations in the bar softened, almost as if the air itself sensed the change. Malik looked down at his cup, letting the tension slide past him. He'd been stared at before, by strangers, by enemies, by men who didn't know him, but thought they did. It wasn't new. It wasn't worth reacting to. But the men didn't stop. They whispered among themselves, glancing again and again at him. The bearded man, clearly their leader, tilted his head slowly, sizing Malik up with a kind of cold amusement. Malik could feel it beneath his skin, the slow coil of trouble preparing to unspool. He took another sip, slow, steady, calm. He had survived things far worse than someone's suspicion, but trouble rarely cared about perspective. Footsteps began moving across the wooden floor. Heavy ones. Purposeful. Malik didn't need to look up to know who they belonged to. You, the bearded man said, stopping right beside the booth. The room grew quieter, like everyone wanted to hear, but didn't want to look. Malik raised his eyes. The man stood inches from the table, broad shoulders blocking out the overhead lights, leather jacket creaking with every breath. His buddies fanned out behind him, forming a loose semicircle. You wearing that uniform for real? The man asked. Or is that something you rented from a thrift store? A few chuckles rolled through the group, mean and expectant. Malik kept his voice even. It's real. That's so. The man leaned forward, placing both hands on the table. Funny thing is, real soldiers carry themselves different. And they sure as hell don't sit in a bar wearing boots like that. More laughter. Malik didn't move. His breath stayed steady. I'm not here to impress anybody, he said. The bearded man grinned, Well, you're doing a terrible job anyway. One of the men behind him snorted. Probably one of those wannabes who shows up to parades pretending to be somebody. Another chimed in. Yeah, look at him. Quiet, tucked away, hoping nobody asks questions. Malik's jaw tightened a fraction, but his voice stayed calm. You done? The leader smirked, and for a moment Malik could see it clearly. The man wasn't angry. He was hungry. For dominance. For spectacle. For something to make his night feel bigger than it was. Not even close, the leader said. Stand up. Malik's eyes narrowed slightly. No. The refusal cut deeper than any insult. A few patrons shifted in their seats. What'd you say to me? The leader asked, his voice low with rising heat. I said no. Malik's tone stayed calm, deliberate. I'm not standing so you can measure me. The man's smile disappeared. He leaned closer. Then tell me this. What unit you claimin', huh? What base? What rank? Or did you forget those details when you bought that uniform online? Malik stared back, unblinking. I don't need to explain myself to a stranger. The man slammed a hand on the table, causing several glasses around the room to rattle. The bar fell into full silence. Even the jukebox seemed to hesitate. You walk in here dressed like that, he growled. You're explaining something. Malik didn't move, didn't flinch. I served. That's enough. No, son. The man's lips curled. It ain't. He reached out suddenly, aiming for Malik's collar, but he never made it. Malik caught the man's wrist mid-extension, grip firm but controlled. The leader's eyes widened with surprise, but he didn't have time to react. Malik pivoted slightly, guiding the man's arm downward with smooth, trained precision, redirecting his aggressive pull into a stumble. The man dropped to one knee beside the booth, face inches from the floor. A stunned gasp swept across the room. Malik didn't raise his voice. Don't touch me. For a moment, the leader stayed frozen, breathing hard, humiliation burning across his skin. Then, you just made a mistake, he hissed, and everything in the room shifted again. The leader's words slithered out between his teeth, thick with rage and wounded pride. Malik could feel every eye in the bar drilling into the scene. The uniformed stranger, and the man now on one knee beside his booth. Slowly, Malik released his grip and leaned back, giving the leader room to stand. You should sit down, he said quietly. This doesn't have to get worse. The man lurched to his feet, his face flushed a furious red. He snatched his arm back like it had been burned. Behind him, his crew shifted uneasily, caught somewhere between loyalty and the shock of seeing their loudest voice brought low in one effortless movement. What are you looking at? A leader snapped at them, his voice cracking slightly. He jumped me. The nearest buddy, a stockier man with a faded eagle tattoo on his neck, cleared his throat. Ray, maybe we should. I said he jumped me, Ray repeated, louder this time, as if he could rewrite the last 10 seconds by sheer force of volume. At the bar, the owner woman in her 50s with tired eyes and a towel slung over her shoulder, kept her hands pressed flat on the counter. She didn't move closer, but she didn't look away either. Her gaze flicked between Malik and Ray, judging every second, every choice. Listen, Malik said, his voice low but carrying. I'm not here for trouble. I'm not here for you. I just want to finish my drink and leave. That's all. Ray turned back to him slowly, breathing like he'd run up a hill. You think you can put your hands on me and walk out of here like nothing happened? You tried to grab me, Malik replied calmly. I redirected you. That's it. One of the men behind Ray muttered. He barely moved, man. You kind of fell. Ray whirled around on him. You taking sides now? The guy held up his hands defensively. I'm just saying it looked "Shut up," Ray snapped, before turning back to Malik. His eyes narrowed at the patches sewn onto Malik's jacket. "You know what the real problem is? I bled for this country. My brothers bled for this country. I watched men get folded into flags, and now every other month, some kid shows up wearing a uniform like it's a costume, hoping somebody thanks him for service he never gave." Malik listened, the words piercing through the anger in the air. For a flicker of a moment, he saw it. Behind the bluster and the rage, there was hurt. Old hurt, never healed. "I'm sorry for what you went through," Malik said quietly. "I mean that, but I earned this uniform, same way you did. Maybe not in the same years, maybe not in the same places, but the sand, the heat, the noise, the empty chairs back home. I know those too." Ray snorted. "You expect me to buy that? You don't even have proper combat boots on." Malik glanced down at his footwear, then back up. "You ever tried driving 11 hours in steel-toe boots?" he asked, a faint edge of dry humor in his tone. "I switched to something that doesn't lock up my ankles. Comfort doesn't cancel service." A few patrons almost smiled at that. Tension cracking for half a heartbeat. He said, "You want to prove me wrong? Show your ID. Show your dog tags. Show me something real." Malik replied, "I don't answer to you. I've had officers, commanders, people whose word was stamped in ink. Your suspicion is not a rank." Ray's eyes went flat. "That so?" He stepped back, lifted his chin toward his crew. "Y'all hear that? He doesn't answer to me, but he'll answer to someone." The man with the eagle tattoo hesitated. "Ray, come on. Don't bring cops into this. You know how." Ray had already pulled his phone out. He jabbed at the screen and lifted it to his ear, his glare never leaving Malik's face. "Yeah," he said when the operator answered. "I'm at Royce's Roadhouse, off the state highway. There's a guy here pretending to be Army. Full uniform. He put his hands on me. Got violent. I want somebody out here now." The words drifted over the room like smoke. Malik closed his eyes, briefly, then opened them again. The owner muttered under her breath and reached for the landline behind the bar, her fingers hovering over it as if deciding whether she needed backup for the backup. One of the older regulars near the jukebox shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable. He'd watched everything, Ray's swagger, the grab, the fall. But you could see it in his eyes. Stepping in meant picking a side, and picking a side meant inheriting a storm. Ray ended the call and slid his phone into his pocket. "They're on their way," he announced, voice rising. "We'll see how long your little act holds up when real authority walks through that door." Malik exhaled slowly. The air felt heavier now, like the bar had shrunk around him. The owner finally stepped out from behind the counter. "Ray," she said, calm but firm. "You know I don't want trouble in here. I saw you start this." Ray swung his head toward her. "You saw him attack me." "I saw you crowd his table," she replied. "I saw you reach first. Don't twist it." He stared at her for a long beat, jaw working. "You gonna take his word over mine now?" "I'm gonna tell the truth if anyone asks," she answered. The man with the eagle tattoo shifted closer to Malik's table. But this time, he came with his hands visible and open, palms facing forward. "Look," he said, his tone lower, less sharp. "You really served?" "Yes," Malik said simply. "Where?" Malik watched his face, searching for mockery. He didn't see it, only worry, and something like doubt about the path they were standing on. "Last tour was abroad," Malik answered. "Before that, stateside training rotations. Army. Logistics and security." The man swallowed. "You got family waiting on you?" "Yes." "And you chose to spend your night here?" he asked, trying for a small, strained smile. Malik shrugged. "I wanted to sit somewhere that wasn't moving." A couple of people chuckled quietly. Even the man with the eagle tattoo let out a breathy laugh. Ray's glare hardened. Don't start getting soft on him, Luke. You heard what I told them. Cops are already coming. Luke rubbed the back of his neck. Maybe they don't need to see anything more. Maybe we just cool down, yeah? Let the man finish his drink. Ray took a step toward Malik again. No, if he's lying, I'm not letting it slide. People died in uniforms like that. I won't watch some pretender wear one like cheap fabric. Malik's voice softened. You think you're the only one who's lost friends there? Ray stiffened. Images flickered across Malik's mind. Faces he tried not to see when he closed his eyes. A pair of boots lined up beside a folded flag. Names read out in a voice that never quite stopped echoing. Roads that never felt the same after a convoy didn't return. You don't know me, Malik continued. You don't know what I've done, what I've carried home. You only know what your anger wants to see. Ray's features flickered for just a second, like a light trying to stay dim. If you're telling the truth, he said slowly, almost grudgingly. You show proof. That's all I'm asking. And when I do, Malik asked, you apologize? Or does your pride find a new story to tell? Ray's mouth pressed into a thin line. He didn't answer. The room fell into a thick silence. Outside, distant sirens began to faintly wail, weaving through the night toward them. Luke shifted his weight from foot to foot. They're actually coming, he muttered. Malik glanced at his duffel bag on the seat beside him. He could picture what was inside. Meticulously folded dress uniform, engraved ID, proof enough to drown doubt. But something in him bucked against the idea of jumping to commands tossed at him by a stranger in a bar. He would cooperate with law. He didn't owe obedience to suspicion. The door's glass rattled lightly as the wind pushed against it. The sirens growing louder. Malik lifted his cup and took one last slow sip of sweet tea. It tasted like home and dust and choices. He set it down carefully and straightened in his seat. You wanted attention, he said calmly to Ray. You're about to get more than you asked for. Ray's eyes flashed. Good, he replied. I want the whole world to see what you are. Malik's gaze didn't waver. Maybe, he murmured. They're about to see what you are, too. The sirens cut off just outside, leaving a ringing quiet in their wake. Red and blue light began to smear across the walls and ceiling, sliding over faces, over glasses, over Malik's uniform. Every heartbeat in the room seemed to pause, hovering in that fragile moment, before the door opened and judgment stepped inside. The headlights outside flickered once, then steadied. Engines hummed low, doors slammed shut, and boots crunched on gravel. The bar's windows pulsed with alternating bands of red and blue, washing over faces and throwing nervous shadows across the wooden floor. Then the door swung open. Two officers stepped inside. One tall and broad-shouldered, with a trimmed beard and an unreadable gaze. The other, a woman with sharp eyes that missed nothing, her posture calm but assertive. The room collectively held its breath. The tall officer spoke first. We got a report of an altercation involving possible impersonation of military personnel. His gaze swept the crowd, before settling on Ray, who immediately jabbed a finger at Malik. That's him, Ray barked. He put his hands on me. He's wearing a uniform he didn't earn. The officer's eyes drifted to Malik, who sat still in his booth, neither defensive nor shrinking back, simply present, steady as stone. The officer didn't react immediately. Instead, he took in the tension, the scattered stares, the uneasiness thickening the air. Sir, the female officer said gently, addressing Malik. Is that true? Did an altercation occur? Malik nodded once. He approached my table. He reached for me. I redirected his arm so he wouldn't make contact. No punches, no hits, no escalation. Ray scoffed. Redirected? You slammed me to the floor. You lost your balance, Malik replied evenly. I didn't strike you. The female officer turned to the bar owner. Ma'am, what did you see? The owner crossed her arms, stepping closer. I saw Ray crowd him. I saw Ray reach out. And I saw this young man move in self-defense. Controlled. No excessive force. A few patrons nodded subtly behind her. Luke, shoulders tight with conflict, finally stepped forward. He didn't start anything, he admitted quietly, not meeting Ray's eyes. Ray was worked up. The guy didn't do nothing wrong. Ray spun toward him. Whose side are you on? The side that actually saw what happened, Luke muttered. The female officer turned back to Malik. Do you have any proof of service? Identification, insignia, documentation. Malik exhaled, slow and silent. Without breaking eye contact, he reached beside him and lifted his duffel bag onto his lap. The room watched every motion as he unzipped it, and neatly pulled out a folded dress jacket, its patches, medals, and nameplate gleaming even in the dim light. He handed it across the table to the tall officer, along with his military ID. The officer inspected the items carefully. His eyes softened, not with sympathy, but with respect. He passed the uniform to his partner, who confirmed its authenticity with a firm nod. The tall officer turned back to Ray. This man is an active duty soldier, he said firmly. Everything checks out. A ripple passed through the room, relief mixed with tension, vindication mixed with brewing embarrassment. Ray's face drained of color. What? He rasped. No, I know what I saw. A real soldier wouldn't be sitting around in. You've made an accusation without evidence, the officer interrupted. You also initiated physical contact. That's consistent with what multiple witnesses just confirmed. Ray opened his mouth, but the officer continued before he could speak. False reports waste time and resources. If we wanted, we could file a citation, or charge you for that alone. Ray took a stumbling step backward. Hold on now, let's not get crazy. I thought. You thought wrong, Luke said sharply, stepping forward with a new, quiet fire in his voice. You went too far, Ray. You've been going too far for a long time. Ray's head snapped to him, hurt rippling beneath the anger. And you took it out on a stranger who didn't deserve it. A heavy stillness settled across the room. Ray looked around, at the patrons, the officers, his crew. And for the first time, his bravado cracked. His shoulders slumped, as he stood surrounded, but completely alone. The tall officer turned to Malik. Sir, he said, do you want to file charges for harassment or attempted assault? Malik shook his head. I don't want this man's night to become worse than it already is. I just want to leave. Ray's jaw clenched, but his eyes flickered with something painfully close to gratitude. Buried under layers of pride he didn't know how to set down. A female officer nodded. Understood. We'll document everything and clear the call. The officers handed Malik's uniform and ID back. He accepted them carefully, folding the jacket with the same precision he used the first day he received it. As they prepared to leave, the tall officer paused and looked directly at Ray. I suggest you think hard about what you're running from, he said softly. It's not this man. The officers walked out, the red and blue fading with them. The door shut, leaving behind an echo of judgment that still hung in the air. Ray lifted a trembling hand to rub his face. He looked older suddenly, not like a commander of a crew, but like a man carrying a weight he'd never learned how to set down. The bar remained silent. Malik stood up slowly, placing a few bills on the table, even though he barely touched his drink. His voice came out steady, not bitter, Not triumphant, just honest. "You don't have to believe me," he said quietly, directing his words toward Ray. "But your anger shouldn't be a weapon you point at strangers." Ray swallowed hard, staring at the floor. Malik turned toward the exit. But before he could reach the door, Ray finally spoke. Voice gritty, stripped of all its armor. "Wait." Malik stopped, but didn't turn around. Ray stood frozen, hands at his sides, breath uneven. I wasn't trying to." His voice cracked slightly, forcing him to swallow again. "I've buried too many brothers, and every time I see someone in uniform, I guess I'm waiting to see which one of us got lucky." He considered Ray for a long moment, then spoke gently. "Pain doesn't disappear just because you shout over it. You've earned the right to feel whatever you feel. But you don't get to throw it at people who didn't put it there." Ray nodded faintly, shoulders stiff. Malik didn't stay for a reply. He opened the door and stepped into the cool night, where the distant chirp of insects blended with the soft hum of patrol cars pulling away. The air tasted cleaner outside, like he'd finally walked out of a storm he never wanted to be in. Behind him, the door shut softly, but the story inside wasn't finished. Not for Ray, not for Malik, and not for the shadows that had been stirred awake tonight. Tomorrow would hold its own reckoning. The night felt sharper once Malik stepped outside, as if the world had been holding its breath with him inside that bar, and finally exhaled the moment he crossed the threshold. Cool air swept across his face, smoothing out the last traces of tension that clung to his shoulders. The patrol cars pulled away slowly, their taillights fading into the dark stretch of highway until nothing remained but silence and the faint hum of cicadas. Malik paused beside his sedan, closing his eyes for a moment. It should have been over. Just a bad encounter, a storm that passed. But something inside him remained unsettled, not from fear, not from doubt, but from the growing awareness that what happened inside that bar had peeled open a wound he thought he'd stitched up long ago. He hated how familiar it felt, being misjudged, being challenged, being asked to prove he belonged. He told himself to let it go. He was alive. He was home. That was enough. But the mind rarely obeyed logic when emotions bled through memory. He slid into the driver's seat, but didn't start the car yet. His phone buzzed on the passenger seat, his sister, sending another voice note. She'd been sending them all week, each one full of excitement about his return. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Mom's making your favorite. Don't drive too late, okay? Love you." Her voice softened something in his chest. He played the message twice before finally starting the engine. The drive home was quiet. Long stretches of dark highway, broken occasionally by streetlights or distant headlights drifting past like ghosts. His mind wandered back to Ray, not with anger, but with a strange mix of pity and curiosity. That man's eyes held too many stories, none of them healed. Pain doesn't disappear just because you shout over it. Malik meant the words when he said them. He had lived them. But he knew they weren't solutions, just truths. And truths didn't fix people unless they wanted to be fixed. By the time he pulled into his driveway, the clock on the dashboard blinked 11:48 p.m. He parked under the flickering street lamp and stepped out into the cool night. His small rental house looked lonely, its porch light dim, mail piling up near the door. He barely settled back into civilian life. The house didn't feel like home yet, just a place where his keys happened to fit. He unlocked the door and stepped inside. A quiet greeted him, like an empty room always does. He set his duffel bag on the couch, washed his face in the bathroom sink, and tried to sleep. But sleep didn't come easily. The night crawled forward. The ceiling stared back at him in the darkness. His breaths were slow, even. But his mind was anything but calm. He wasn't replaying the confrontation. He was replaying the look in Ray's eyes when the truth finally hit him. The look of a man who'd spent too many years fighting shadows that were no longer on the field. Tomorrow, Malik thought. Tomorrow, everything resets. I see my family. I breathe easier. That promise finally lulled him into a restless sleep. Morning came quietly. Faint sunlight filtered through blinds he hadn't bothered to adjust since he moved in. Malik stretched, pushing aside the uneasy remnants of the night before, and got dressed in plain clothes, jeans, a clean shirt, comfortable shoes. He packed a small overnight bag for the trip to his mother's house, 2 towns over. He was tightening the straps on his pack when he heard something outside. A low rumbling. Motorcycles. Plural. His stomach sank, not in fear, but in frustration. He stepped to the window and peeked out. 3 bikes rolled into his driveway, and then a 4th. The engines cut off, one by one. The silence that followed, far heavier than the noise. Malik immediately recognized 2 of the faces. Luke was among them, but so was Ray. Ray climbed off his bike slowly, helmet tucked under one arm. His posture wasn't aggressive. It wasn't triumphant. If anything, he looked uncomfortable, maybe even humbled, standing there on Malik's driveway, like a man who didn't belong. Malik considered his options. Stay inside, ignore them? No, avoidance wasn't his way, and Ray didn't look like he came for a rematch. Malik stepped outside, closing the door behind him. None of the men moved at first. Luke cleared his throat awkwardly. "Morning," he said. Malik nodded. "Morning." Ray finally stepped forward. His eyes were clearer today, less clouded by alcohol, adrenaline, or pride. He swallowed hard, shifted his weight, then began speaking in a low, steady voice. "I owe you a better apology than the one I tried last night." Malik said nothing. He waited. Ray looked down at his gloved hands. "I went home, and didn't sleep worth a damn. Kept thinking about the way I came at you, the way I treated you. I was out of line." Luke stepped in, arms crossed. "We told him the same thing." Ray shot him a brief look, but not an angry one. More grateful. Ray continued. "I wasn't angry at you, not really. I was angry at everything else. Stuff I ain't dealt with in years. Stuff I keep carrying around like it's part of my skin." He hesitated. "Doesn't excuse anything. You didn't deserve what I did." Malik studied him quietly. The man had aged overnight. Carved lines where stubbornness used to sit. Humility softening the edges of his voice. "I'm not looking for forgiveness," Ray added, eyes lifting finally. "I'm just trying to be better than who I was yesterday." A long silence stretched between them, filled only by distant birdsong and the light rumble of a passing truck. Malik stepped closer. "You showed up," he said. "Most people don't." Ray let out a shaky breath. "Most people don't feel shame the way I did." Malik shrugged slightly. "Shame is just pain trying to grow into honesty." Ray blinked, unsure how to respond to that. Malik continued. "What happened last night? We can let that stay there, but you shouldn't spend the rest of your life fighting a war that ended already." Ray's jaw tightened, but this time with emotion instead of anger. "I lost good men over there, Malik. Brothers, better than me. And I came home with nobody to talk to. No mission. Just noise in my head." "I know what that's like," Malik said gently. Luke inhaled slowly, his voice dropping. "We all do. Just not all of us handle it the right way." Ray nodded slowly. "I want to fix things, not just with you. With myself." Malik looked each of them in the eyes, saw the sincerity, the struggle, the silent hopes they didn't know how to express. Then let's start with simple respect, Malik said, between all of us. Ray offered a small, almost shy nod. They're lucky to have you home. Malik gave him a faint, genuine smile. We're all lucky to make it home. For the first time, Ray smiled back. Small, fragile, but real. Luke turned to mount his bike. We'll get out of your way. But before the engines roared again, Ray spoke one last time. If you ever need anything, he murmured, you just call. No questions asked. Malik nodded slowly. I'll remember that. The bike started up, one by one, rumbling through the driveway before rolling onto the road and disappearing down the street. The quiet that followed was different this time. Not empty, not heavy, peaceful. Malik took a long breath, lifted his bag, and walked toward his car. He still had miles to go, but the day felt lighter now, like a burden had been quietly lifted from two men at once. What he didn't know was that the day ahead would test that calm in ways he hadn't imagined yet. The highway stretched out before Malik like a familiar ribbon, long, calm, dotted with trees swaying gently in the morning breeze. The sun had barely lifted above the horizon, painting the sky in soft golds and pale blues. Malik rolled down the window, letting the warm air drift through the car as he drove toward Winston-Salem. The heaviness from last night felt like it had evaporated into the wind. He drove with a quiet peace he hadn't felt in months, but peace wasn't a guarantee. It was a moment, a fragile one. About an hour into the drive, Malik turned off onto a small town road, the kind lined with old brick buildings and cafes with faded signs. He wanted to grab something for his sister, her favorite pastries from the bakery she always begged him to visit. He parked across the street, locked the car, and crossed toward the bakery with a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. He never made it inside. A sharp crack, like something striking metal, echoed down the street. Malik stopped mid-step, instincts rising instantly. His senses sharpened, breath slowing as he scanned the area. Another sound followed, not loud, soft, a choked sob from behind the alleyway. Malik's muscles tensed, not with fear, but readiness. He walked quietly toward the source of the noise, each step careful, deliberate. As he reached the corner, he leaned slightly, eyes narrowing. Two men stood around a younger guy, couldn't be more than 18, skinny, shaking, trying to clutch a backpack pressed against his chest. His lip was bleeding. One of the men pushed him against the wall, while the other yanked the backpack away from him. Come on, kid, the taller man sneered. You think you can walk through our street without respect? Huh? The kid shook his head, voice trembling. I wasn't trying to. Please, I just want to go home. The shorter man laughed, then pay the toll. Malik stepped forward silently, his voice cutting through the alley like a blade. Let him go. Both men froze. They turned. The taller one squinted. Who the hell are you? Malik stopped a few feet away, posture relaxed but unyielding. Someone telling you to leave that kid alone. The shorter man snorted. You serious? You alone, man. Don't make this your problem. Malik tilted his head. The second I heard him cry, it became my problem. The taller man shoved the kid harder, keeping him pinned. This ain't charity hour. Walk away before you get hurt. Malik breathed in once, slow. Last chance, he said softly. Let him go and walk away. The shorter man pushed off the wall and walked toward Malik, cracking his knuckles. Or what? You gonna play hero? Malik didn't answer. He didn't need to. The man swung. Wild, untrained, predictable. Malik sidestepped with a fluidity that came not from strength, but from discipline. He guided the man's momentum with a light touch to his shoulder, sending him stumbling past. Before the man could recover, Malik tapped his knee sideways, controlled, precise, not meant to break, only to fold. The man collapsed with a yelp. "You done?" Malik asked calmly. The taller man cursed and shoved the teen aside, charging forward with his fists raised. Malik met him, not with aggression, but with clarity. A quick parry, a twist of the wrist, a shift of weight, and the taller man was bent forward, gasping as Malik held him in a controlled arm lock. "Stop," Malik warned. "I don't want to hurt you. I just need you to walk away." The taller man growled, but the fight drained out of him. His knees buckled slightly. Malik released him gently and stepped back. The alley fell silent. The kid pressed himself against the wall, eyes wide, chest rising and falling in sharp gasps. The shorter man groaned, struggling to sit up. "Man, who is this guy?" The taller man rubbed his shoulder, glaring with a mix of pain and fear. "Let's go," he spat, but the veneer of toughness was gone. He grabbed the backpack off the ground, tossed it toward the kid without meeting his eyes, then limped out of the alley. The shorter man followed, shooting Malik a hateful look, but too shaken to linger. Malik waited until they were out of sight before turning to the teen. "You okay?" he asked gently. The kid swallowed hard, wiping the blood from his lip. "Yeah, I think. Thank you. I didn't know what else to do." "What's your name?" "Marcus." Malik nodded. "You live around here?" "About 2 blocks north," Marcus whispered. "I was just going home. Do you want me to walk you?" Marcus hesitated, then nodded. "Please." Malik walked beside him, keeping a comfortable distance so the boy didn't feel watched or judged. As they reached the corner of the street, Marcus suddenly spoke. They said I was in the wrong place, that I didn't belong here, that I'm nothing." Malik stopped walking. He looked Marcus in the eyes, really looked. "You listen to me," Malik said softly but firmly. "You don't let broken people define your worth. You belong wherever your feet are planted. Understand?" Marcus's eyes glistened. "They would have hurt me bad. But they didn't," Malik said gently, "and they won't today." Marcus let out a shaky breath. "I'm scared it'll happen again." Malik placed a hand lightly on the boy's shoulder. "Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the choice to keep moving despite it." Marcus swallowed hard and nodded. "I'll be okay," he whispered, more to himself than Malik. "You will," Malik replied. He walked Marcus the rest of the way home, until the porch light of the boy's house flicked on, and an older woman swung open the door. Gasping at the sight of her injured son, Malcolm stepped back, letting the family moment unfold at a distance. Marcus pointed at Malik, explaining something quickly, but Malik shook his head. He didn't need thanks. He didn't want attention. He just gave Marcus a small nod and turned away. His phone buzzed in his pocket as he walked back toward his car. A text from Luke. "We heard something happened in town." "You good?" Malik blinked. They were still looking out for him. He typed back, "I'm fine. Just handled something. Everything's okay." He slipped his phone away as he approached the bakery again. But the bakery door burst open before he reached it. A young woman sprinted out, panic etched across her face. She nearly collided with him, gripping her phone tightly. "Sir, did you see 2 guys run past here?" she gasped. "They just robbed a store down the block." Malik froze. Not again. Not today. He stared down the street, eyes narrowing. Something told him today's trouble wasn't finished. And whatever came next was bigger than he thought. Malik stood frozen for half a second, the woman's breathless words pressing into him like a sudden weight. Two men, robbery, on foot. And he already knew exactly which two. The alley, the voices, the faces twisted with frustration and humiliation. It wasn't a robbery gone wrong. It was retaliation. The woman clutched her phone tightly, eyes wide. They stole cash and the owner's bag. They ran that way. She pointed down the street where Malik had just helped Marcus. Malik's heartbeat steadied into something sharper. Not panic, not fear, purpose. Call the police, he told her firmly. Stay inside. She nodded frantically and ran back into the shop, slamming the door behind her. Malik broke into a run. Not reckless, not impulsive. Just controlled urgency. The street sloped downward, and the morning sun cast long shadows across the pavement. Up ahead, he saw them. Two figures sprinting near the old train station. The shorter one clutching a bag tightly against his chest. The same two he had put on the ground earlier. The same two who wanted payback. They spotted him at the same moment he spotted them. The taller man cursed loudly. No, this dude again? The shorter one spun around, wild panic in his eyes. Just keep running. But Malik wasn't just any pursuer. He knew how to conserve speed, how to keep steady breathing, how to close distance without exhausting himself. The two men ran clumsily, fueled only by fear. Malik ran with focus. Block after block, he gained on them. They turned sharply behind a hardware store, panting loudly. The taller man shouted, split up, and they veered in opposite directions. A rookie mistake. They assumed Malik would chase one and give up the other. Instead, Malik stopped in the center of the forked path. His eyes flicked left, then right. The footprints on the dusty pavement told him everything. The shorter man was heavier on his right foot, leaving deeper pressure. He was slower, but he was the one holding the stolen bag. Malik sprinted right. The alley narrowed, and the shorter man looked back, eyes bulging. Why won't you leave us alone? You made it my business, Malik replied calmly, closing in. The man skid to a stop, breath heaving, and grabbed a broken metal pipe from near a dumpster. His hands shook as he held it out. Back off. I swear I'll swing. That's very strong. Malik slowed not out of fear, but out of calculation. You don't want to use that, he said evenly. The man's voice cracked. Stay away. Malik took one more step. The man lunged. It was sloppy, desperate. Everything about it screamed fear instead of intent. Malik sidestepped, letting the pipe graze past him, and tapped the man's wrist downward. The pipe clattered to the ground. Before the man could react, Malik used his forearm to guide him into the brick wall. Controlled, safe, but firm. The man groaned. Because you crossed a line, Malik said, grabbing the bag from his hands. And lines have consequences. Footsteps thundered behind him. Malik turned just in time to see the taller man rushing in with a brick, fury etched across his face. You knocked us down once. Try it now. Malik's instincts flared. He raised an arm to block the incoming strike, feeling the jolt ricochet through his muscles, then countered with a clean shoulder check that sent the man stumbling backward. Stop, Malik warned. But the taller man charged again, brick raised high. Before Malik could respond, a shout rang out. Hey, drop it. Malik spun around. Ray, helmet under his arm, leather jacket dusted with road grit. Luke and the others fanned out behind him. They must have been riding nearby, checking on Malik after his text. Their timing wasn't coincidence. It was instinct. Ray didn't hesitate. He stepped forward with the calm authority of someone who once knew discipline, like the back of his hand. Drop the damn brick. The taller man hesitated. Ray's voice carried something, Malik hadn't heard from him before. Firm, controlled leadership. Not ego, not bravado, but strength. The taller man let the brick fall. Luke moved in, keeping the corner blocked off. Ray turned to Malik. "We got your message. Something told me you weren't as fine as you said." Malik exhaled. "You weren't wrong." Ray looked at the two men slumped and defeated. "These the ones?" "Yeah," Malik said. "They attacked a kid earlier, then robbed a store." Ray approached the shorter man, who flinched like he expected a punch. But Ray didn't raise a hand. He just crouched down. "Son, you don't know the man you messed with," Ray said quietly. "He's the kind of soldier who remembers how to protect people, not hurt them." The man blinked in confusion. Ray stood again and looked at Malik. "You need help turning them in?" Malik nodded. "Yeah. Police should be almost here." As if on cue, sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer with every second. The taller man sagged to his knees. "We didn't mean to." Ray cut him off sharply. "Save it. You want to turn your life around? You start by owning what you did, not hiding behind excuses." Luke crossed his arms. "He's right. We'll stick around to make sure you don't try anything stupid." The two men didn't move, couldn't move. They were exhausted, defeated, and outmatched not by physical strength, but by resolve. Malik leaned against the alley wall, catching his breath. Ray walked over quietly, standing beside him. "You know," Ray muttered, "most folks run away from trouble." Malik gave a faint smirk. "I tried once. Didn't take." Ray chuckled, an honest, grounded laugh. "You ever think maybe your purpose ain't done yet?" Malik didn't answer, but something in the question lingered in his mind. The patrol cars screeched to a halt at the alley entrance. Officers stepped out, hands on their holsters, but not drawn. They could already see the situation was contained. When they saw Malik, one of them recognized him from last night. "You again?" the officer said, blinking. "Did you move trouble with you or something?" Malik shrugged. "It found me." The officers took statements, arrested the two men, retrieved the stolen bag, thanked Malik, thanked Ray and his crew. It took several minutes before the alley emptied and the dust settled. Finally, it was just Malik and Ray standing there under the warming light of the morning sun. Ray turned to him, wiping sweat from his brow. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," Malik replied. "You?" Ray nodded slowly. "Better than I was yesterday." For a moment, neither spoke. Then Ray added quietly, "You keep helping people, Malik, without hesitation, without expecting anything. That's rare. And a man like you changes people." Malik tilted his head. "Like you?" Ray swallowed. "Yeah, like me." They shook hands, this time, not as strangers, not as adversaries, but as equals. As men who had finally found solid ground beneath their feet. Malik grabbed the small bakery bag he had dropped earlier and walked toward his car. Ray called out as Malik opened the door. "You know you're not alone in this world, right?" Malik paused. Voice softened. "If you ever need someone to stand beside you, we're here." For a moment, Malik didn't know what to say. So he nodded, slow, meaningful. "Thank you," he said. Ray smiled. Then the engines of the motorcycles roared to life again, echoing through the street like a promise. As Malik drove off toward his mother's house, he glanced in the rearview mirror at the fading figures of Ray and his crew. He didn't know it yet, but the bond formed today would come back in ways he couldn't imagine. Because peace, even the kind he found this morning, never lasted long. And the world had one more storm waiting for him. Malik reached the outskirts of Winston-Salem, just as the sun began dipping behind the rolling hills, turning the sky into soft streaks of orange and pink. The long day weighed on him, not just in his muscles, but in the deeper corners of his mind where old memories hid. Yet for the first time in a long while, that weight didn't feel suffocating. It felt carried, balanced, like he wasn't holding it alone anymore. He pulled onto the small rural road leading to his mother's home. The sight of the old mailbox, bent from years of weather and stubbornness, made something warm flicker in his chest. He slowed down as he approached the familiar white house with the wraparound porch and creaky steps. Before he even turned off the engine, the front door opened. His mother stepped out, apron still tied around her waist, wiping her hands on a towel. Her eyes, soft, warm, and impossibly relieved, locked onto him. And Malik felt something inside him settle. He stepped out of the car, barely closing the door, before she wrapped her arms around him. He returned the embrace, grounding himself in the scent of lavender and home-cooked meals, the smell of belonging. "My boy," she whispered into his shoulder, voice trembling. "You're home." "Yeah, Ma," he murmured. "I'm home." When they finally pulled away, his sister burst out the door next, almost tripping over herself, before slamming into him with a hug strong enough to crack ribs. Malik laughed, really laughed, and hugged her back. "You didn't call when you left," she scolded with a pout. "We've been waiting all day." "I'm here now," he said, "and I brought you something." He handed her the bakery bag. Her eyes lit up. "No way! From Sweet Maples? Only the best for you." She dashed inside triumphantly. His mother smiled at him with tired eyes full of gratitude and unspoken questions. "You okay?" she asked softly. Malik nodded slowly. "I am. Better than I've been in a long time." She searched his face, reading the truth there like only a mother could. "Come inside," she said warmly. "Dinner's ready, and your room's exactly how you left it." He followed her in, letting the warmth of home soak into him. The house was filled with familiar smells. Cornbread, roasted chicken, sweet potatoes, and a soft gospel song playing from the old radio. His shoulders loosened. His heartbeat steadied. He was finally at rest. Hours later, after stories were shared and laughter echoed through the house, Malik stepped outside, onto the porch. The night air was crisp, the sky dotted with stars, stretching endlessly above. He leaned against the railing, staring out into the quiet. The wind rustled the grass, and the world felt still, gentle in a way he rarely experienced. His phone buzzed, a message. From an unknown number. He frowned and opened it. "This is Ray. Hope I'm not bothering you. Just wanted to say. P. Thanks for not giving up on people like me. P." Malik exhaled softly, a faint smile touching his lips. P. He typed back, and then said, "People don't need perfection. They need direction. Take care of yourself, Ray." A moment later, "You too, soldier." Malik slid the phone into his pocket and looked back up at the sky. The world had shown him ugliness yesterday, brokenness this morning, and redemption before noon. He realized then, peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of purpose. And his purpose wasn't something he could outrun. It followed him, challenged him, shaped him, made him someone who stepped in, even when he didn't have to. Someone who changed people, because they needed changing. Someone who understood that sometimes the hardest battles aren't overseas, but right here. In bars, in alleys, in the quiet corners of a town, in the hearts of men, carrying ghosts they never named. Malik stood, quietly under the stars, the cool wind brushing against his skin. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't perfect. He was simply someone who refused to let the world stay broken. And tonight, finally, he felt at peace. Thank you for watching this powerful story. If Malik's journey moved you, make sure to subscribe for more emotional, cinematic stories like this one. Your support helps us bring more inspiring tales to life. Stay strong, stay kind, and remember, sometimes the quietest battles create the strongest heroes.